What is your worst sexual story? When I was about 15, my then girlfriend and I had the day off school and decided we just wanted to have sex all day. Now since we were still living with our parents at the time and I also lived across town from her, I couldn't just ask my parents to drive me over there when her parents weren't home, religious family beliefs, so I had to get up early, and walk a good hour over to her house to get there after her parents left for work. Now when I get there everything's going great for the first few hours, until we hear a knock on the door. We were in a spare room that had a full window that you could see into from the front door. Luckily the shades were down, and here I am, naked, blindfolded and tied to the bed while she quickly throws on a robe and answers the door. Now this whole time, roughly about 10 minutes, I'm tied naked to the bed barely being able to hear what they were saying, crapping myself thinking it was one of her parents. Turned out to just be a family friend that she just got chatting to and couldn't get to leave. Anyway, after that she came back in and profusely started apologizing for leaving me like that and we start going at it again. Couple hours pass, we're having a good time and then we hear someone pulling up the driveway. And we thought it might just be another family friend or something, so she took a peek out the window to see who it was. It was her mother. Her mother hated me for some reason from the very beginning, and even more after she found out we were having sex, so we were both terrified. I ended up hiding under the bed, again completely naked, for about half an hour until her mother left. Now at this point she thought we should just call it a day and both leave the house to avoid any more close calls. Me being an idiot convinced her that we should stay and keep going. So now it's around lunchtime and her mother generally always came home from work for lunch break, so to avoid getting caught I left early and instead of going out the front door and walking the streets, thinking her mom would see me, I decided to take a walking trail that was behind her house and lead to a park, which we would later meet at. Here I am thinking I'm smart walking along. Turn the corner only to be greeted by her mother on the same trail. I crapped myself. The one time she ever decided to walk back from work and take the same path I did happened to be the one time I would have been safe going out the front door. She then later on sat us both down and gave us the sex talk and also threatened me with telling my very religious parents if she found out we kept having sex afterwards. Which, being young and dumb, absolutely didn't stop us. What's the dumbest rule your school ever enforced? My school banned water bottles. A water drinking fad started at my school, mostly among girls, and soon all of them were walking around carrying plastic purified water bottles from the major brands. They all wanted to look health conscious and cool. But then it became a matter of showing off who can be the most healthy and hydrated, so having a mere 750 milliliters bottle wasn't enough anymore. So the girls began bringing larger and larger water bottles and jugs to school to outshine one another. Eventually they began carrying 5 liters plastic jugs with them all over the school grounds. It looked silly. Eventually the guys jumped on board the fad and brought even larger water containers to school. One guy brought a baggage trolley to school on which he transported a 20 liters industrial water dispenser bottle. At this point the principal had had enough. It was a posh, image-conscious school with fancy uniforms and he didn't like seeing the students all lugging around big plastic jugs of water, looking like homeless people. So he banned any and all bottles from school and told the students to drink water from the bathroom taps and other drinking fountains. This is dumb because drinking water regularly is healthy. He could have simply banned all bottles over 750 milliliters and could have simply told us to keep the bottles hidden away in our bags and out of sight when walking around between classes. What is your most embarrassing/shameful hookup story? First ever throwaway post, and boy is it worth it. I wouldn't describe this as embarrassing or shameful, it was downright humiliating. So one had just started dating a guy I had liked for years and years. We had gone on maybe 2 or 3 dates. I really liked him. We went out to the city one Saturday night after I had finished my exams. I was really excited to get drunk, as was he. As the night progressed, we both realized that we were getting to the point of no return and should leave the club and go somewhere a little more relaxed to wind down. We go to this little wine bar, and we start drinking wine. Big mistake. I don't drink wine. 2 or 3 drinks down and I am absolutely shit-faced and so is he. Positively hammered. I don't remember how we got home. From that moment onwards was absolute blackness. I awoke, God knows what time, lying in his single bed, cramped against a wall, with the guy leaning directly over me and shaking me furiously. I was groggy and still completely drunk, but all I remember are the words babe. 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 You shit the bed. I was like, what? No I didn't. Then the smell hit me. It was horrific. It was fucked. I grimaced, looked down, and sure enough, there was a giant puddle of stinking wet shit. I immediately recoiled and denied it, but sure enough, with most investigation, I found it was me. It was all over me, all over the sheets, on the wall, and on him. It was such a small bed, I had pooped all over him and neither of us had woken up for hours. As soon as I realized this, I of course start crying in utter horror, disgust and humiliation. Nothing like this had ever happened before. I really liked this guy, I hadn't so much as silently farted around him, let alone let him hear me go to the toilet. I ran to the bathroom, mortified, and washed all the shit off me before chucking the sheets and everything into the laundry sink and drunkenly scrubbing them. He comes in, telling me he has to wake his mother. The smell is just too bad, he says, with a look of disgust and absolute disappointment on his face. I screamed not to, but he insisted. She came into me standing in her pristine laundry, hammered drunk, crying, naked, still half covered in poop and scrubbing her nice sheets that were covered in my poo. She was of course lovely, comforted me, and cleaned everything. I woke up the next morning to a stinking room, sleeping on the wooden base of his bed. I got up to go pee and even found a chunk of poo on the light switch. Without a doubt the most horrifying experience of my life. The guy even asked me if this happened often. Jesus Christ. Funnily enough, we had great morning sex that morning on the wooden bed base, and are now happily living together, in our own house with no pooey beds, 2 years later. He teases me about it every now and then and we manage to laugh. I can't actually believe it. What is the most dangerous situation you've put yourself into without realizing it until later? This was in freshman year of high school, when I was 15. My dad told me not to walk on a certain block after school. But I did not adhere, so one day I was walking down the same block again, and as I'm halfway down the block I saw two figures walking several feet behind me, one very large in a hoodie swaying back and forth, the other one was smaller than him but larger than me. I turned my head back forward like a dumbass with a gut-wrenching feeling in my stomach, ignoring it. Then in about 5 seconds after turning my head I was lifted off my feet swiftly into an extremely tight chokehold by the bigger man that I couldn't even talk. Instantly realizing my futility at fighting back, I put my hands up indicating I give up. I couldn't talk because the chokehold was too tight and painful. He lets my go and the smaller one tells me to run my pockets. I only had my school Metro card in some sense. He then says, "Nah, we don't want that S," then they leave. My voice was damaged for like a month and it changed since then. What's something you think everybody does, but they don't want to admit? Talk to themselves and act like a complete lunatic when they're confident they're alone. Manufacture excuses to get out of invitations to social functions and other events. Nose-picking, lapel du vide, or the call of the void. It's that feeling when you stand in a high place and think about jumping, but don't actually want to and don't actually do it. Former fat people of Reddit, what's an actual trick that helped you lose weight? When you get a craving for something, instead of telling yourself no, tell yourself later. It's a little psychological trick that seems to work for some reason. The human brain doesn't like never, but it can handle not now just fine. Weird, I know. Drinking as much water as you're supposed to. Sometimes the body makes you think you're hungry when you're actually thirsty. Eat less, move more. It's not about tricks, it's a permanent change of lifestyle that does it. Get a job that involves constant movement. Started mine in August of last year. What do you think still needs to be accepted in today's society? Euthanasia. Seriously, don't leave me in an old folks' home, incoherent and incontinent. Just kill me. That someone who says no to an alcoholic beverage doesn't need to be coerced into having an alcoholic beverage, and that they don't owe anyone an explanation as to why they don't want to imbibe. Some people just want to be left alone. Eating at restaurants alone, not wanting kids or marriage. What's the stupidest thing you believed as a child? That screwing actually required the guy to spin on top of the girl. When people die in movies, they die in real life. Never understood why an actor would take a part in a movie knowing he would be K during filming. My dad told me people wrote their names into concrete with a stick when it was wet. I spent actual hours with a water hose and a stick trying to get my name into a piece of dry concrete. All dogs were male, all cats were female. That you could be fined for opening your window on the highway. That if a couple kissed, a baby would just randomly appear there. What was the worst scandal of your school? If you want a porn scandal, my wife's got one. I've posted this before on a similar thread, but here it goes. At her high school there was a really nice old physics teacher who was very smart but taught at a poor public school to make a difference to the kids. He was really helpful all the time and would stay after class to review the material and talk kids through their outside problems when they were having a bad day. Then, during one class, a girl found and stole a flash drive from his desk. My wife says that this girl was an annoying brat. It turns out the flash drive had a video of him and two other old men masturbating together. It got spread around the whole school, and pretty soon everyone was laughing at and kind of disgusted by the teacher. This was in a very conservative place. The teacher never got fired, but my wife says that his demeanor changed completely, like a 180 from who he was before. He never made jokes or stayed after class to talk about problems at home. He was, "What made you straight up nope out of a relationship?" Wouldn't really call it a relationship as it was only 3 dates, but I had met this girl at a wedding. She was a friend of a friend and we shared numbers that night. Texted for a while and then had a date. First date was probably a big red flag, but I shrugged it off. We had connected on Facebook and she noticed that she went to college with a girl I went to high school with. No big deal, until I found out she had been messaging that girl and asking her all these questions about me in high school. Who did I date, what car I drove, etc. Anyway, third date rolls around. I wasn't really sure how long we would be together, so typically wouldn't have taken her to a really nice restaurant so early in a relationship. But I was in the mood for steak, so I took her to a pretty high-end steakhouse. I have never been more embarrassed by someone's behavior in public in my life, and I have a 6 and 3-year-old at home now. She sent 3 martinis back because they weren't made correctly while being extremely insulting and rude about it. She ordered a steak medium and then got pissed because she insisted she ordered it medium rare. Both the waiter and I told her she had ordered medium. She was making comments about what other women in the restaurant were wearing, and not very subtly. Then, despite me trying to get out of there without buying her dessert, she got a dessert menu and expected them to make her something that they didn't have on the menu. They had cheesecake and she wanted chocolate cheesecake. Another outburst at the staff. On the way out the door she made a point to stop and complain to someone loud enough other customers could hear. When we got into my car I was so embarrassed I pretended I had left my credit card on the table so I could go back in. I gave the waiter an extra $20 and apologized, telling him I was dumping her as soon as I got to her place. He laughed and told me he wished he could see it. I didn't really give her a chance to say much. She called me a loser and stormed off. Haven't seen or heard from her since.